The Vanishing. The UES Leviathan cut through the darkness of space like a predator through water. At 3 kilometers long and bristling with enough firepower to reduce a small moon to rubble, it was humanity's crowning achievement in military engineering. The sleek, matte black hull absorbed rather than reflected light, making it appear like a moving void against the starfield. Only the occasional blue glow from its engine ports and weapons systems broke the perfect darkness. Captain Amara Voss stood on the command bridge, hands clasped behind her back, as she surveyed the holographic displays surrounding her station. 5 years into her command of the Leviathan, and she still felt a surge of pride every time she stepped onto the bridge. Routine patrol, routine day, her XO. Commander Jackson Hayes commented as he approached. His weathered face broke into a slight smile. "You look concerned, Captain." "Just cautious," Voss replied. "The Arcturian border has been quiet for too long. 3 months without a single incursion. That's not like them." The Arcturian hegemony had been humanity's primary adversary for the past decade. The insectoid species controlled a significant portion of the neighboring arm of the galaxy, and their expansionist philosophy had led to numerous skirmishes along the border regions. The Leviathan had been constructed specifically to counter their advanced fleet technologies. "Long-range scans show nothing unusual," Hayes offered, "but will maintain combat readiness throughout the patrol." Voss nodded. "Take us to the Kestrel Nebula. I want to check the sensor outposts there." The massive ship adjusted course, its gravitational engines humming with barely contained power. The crew of 1,200 went about their duties with practiced efficiency. The Leviathan was the flagship of the United Earth Space Force, crewed by the best humanity had to offer. Lieutenant Commander Riza Malik, the ship's science officer, approached the command station with a puzzled expression. "Captain, I'm detecting strange energy readings from the nebula. The pattern doesn't match anything in our database." Voss frowned. "Put it on screen." The main display shifted to show the swirling gases of the Kestrel Nebula, beautiful purples and blues that stretched across thousands of light years. But within those clouds, something was wrong. Pulses of energy in an intricate pattern rippled through the gases. "It's almost like a language," Malik said, his dark eyes narrowed in concentration. "Yellow alert," Voss ordered immediately. "Shields up. Send a message to Fleet Command. We're investigating unknown energy signatures in the Kestrel Nebula." The message never reached Fleet Command. As the Leviathan approached the source of the energy pattern, a blinding flash of light erupted from the heart of the nebula. The ship's systems flickered momentarily and then stabilized. "What was that?" Voss demanded. "Unknown, Captain," the tactical officer responded. "But our position has changed. Stars aren't where they should be." Before anyone could process this information, the energy pattern intensified, forming a swirling vortex directly ahead of the ship. "Evasive maneuvers," Voss shouted, but it was too late. The vortex expanded rapidly, engulfing the massive Dreadnought. For a brief moment, the ship seemed to stretch impossibly, elongating like a reflection in a funhouse mirror. Then, in an instant, the UES Leviathan, pride of the human fleet, and its crew of 1,200 souls, simply vanished. Admiral John Way stood before the assembled leaders of the United Earth government, his face a mask of controlled emotion. 6 months of searching had yielded nothing but questions. "The disappearance remains unexplained," he stated, his voice resonating through the chamber. "We've sent 8 search vessels to the Kestrel Nebula. None have detected any trace of the Leviathan. Our most advanced sensors show no debris, no radiation signature, nothing to indicate the ship was destroyed." President Elena Seto leaned forward. "What are your conclusions, Admiral?" John hesitated only briefly. "The Leviathan appears to have been displaced. Whether through natural phenomena or unknown technology, we cannot say. The Arcturians deny any involvement." Defense Minister Okafor interjected. "Of course they do," Senator Richards scoffed. They've eliminated our most powerful warship without firing a shot. Why would they admit to it? The debate continued for hours, but no consensus was reached. The loss of the Leviathan created a power vacuum along the border. The Arcturians, sensing weakness, began to probe deeper into human territory. Other alien powers, the Vicarian Alliance, the Solari Dominion, adjusted their policies toward Earth and its colonies. Without hard evidence of Arcturian involvement, the UEG was forced to adopt a defensive posture. More ships were built, but none could match the technological marvel that was the Leviathan. The balance of power in the sector had shifted overnight. And then, 5 years after the disappearance, something changed. Dr. Elena Reyes jolted awake as her terminal chimed urgently. The monitoring station on Europa was supposed to be a quiet posting, a place to watch the stars and catalog anomalies while recovering from the loss of her partner, who had served aboard the Leviathan. The terminal display showed a signal pattern she recognized immediately. It matched the last transmission from the Leviathan before it vanished, a pattern she had studied obsessively for years. With trembling hands, she opened a priority channel to Earth Command. "This is Dr. Reyes at Europa Station. I've detected a signal. It's the Leviathan. It's coming back." Within hours, the signal was confirmed by stations throughout the solar system. The pattern was unmistakable, but changed. What had once been a clear, structured communication was now distorted, twisted somehow, like a familiar voice speaking through damaged vocal cords. Admiral Zhang personally arrived at Europa Station 2 days later, accompanied by a team of specialists. "Show me everything," he ordered as soon as he stepped off the shuttle. Reyes led them to the main observatory. "The signal's getting stronger by the hour, and we've detected an energy signature at the edge of the system. It matches the Leviathan's quantum signature, but amplified. Whatever's coming, it's bigger than what left." "Time to intercept?" Zhang asked. "At current velocity." Reyes checked her calculations. 72 hours. Zhang's expression hardened. "Prepare the fleet. I want every available ship at these coordinates in 60 hours. As the others rushed to comply with his orders, Zhang remained behind, staring at the display showing the approaching anomaly. "What happened to you out there?" he whispered. The assembled fleet was impressive. 15 capital ships and their escorts, arranged in a defensive formation at the designated coordinates. It represented nearly a third of Earth's total military strength, a commitment that had not gone unnoticed by the other powers in the sector. Admiral Zhang stood on the bridge of the flagship, the UES Thermopylae. It was the newest dreadnought in the fleet, but still a pale shadow of the Leviathan's capabilities. "Signal approaching," the sensor officer announced. "Reading massive energy distortion. It's opening." Ahead of the fleet, space itself seemed to tear open. A swirling vortex of energy, identical to the one described in the Leviathan's final transmissions, formed against the backdrop of stars. The fleet's sensors went haywire, struggling to process the readings. From the heart of the anomaly, a shape began to emerge. "It's the Leviathan," someone whispered. But it wasn't. Not exactly. The ship that emerged from the vortex bore the same basic configuration as the lost dreadnought, but it was changed. The once sleek hull was now covered in strange, angular protrusions. The matte black surface was intersected with lines of pulsing blue energy that formed intricate alien patterns, and it was larger, nearly twice the size of the vessel that had disappeared 5 years earlier. "Open a channel," Zhang ordered, his voice steady despite the shock evident on his face. "Channel open, sir." "UES Leviathan, this is Admiral Zhang Wei of Earth Command. Captain Voss, if you can hear me, please respond." For long moments, there was silence. Then, a response came, not in words, but in a series of harmonics and pulses that made the communications officers wince in pain. "What is that?" Zhang demanded. Dr. Reyes, who had insisted on accompanying the fleet, paled as she studied her readings. It's a language, but not one we've ever encountered. and not one that human vocal cords could produce. Before John could respond, the transformed Leviathan began to move, not toward the fleet, but past it, accelerating toward the inner system, toward Earth. "Intercept course," John ordered. All ships moved to blockade position. The fleet surged forward, engines flaring as they moved to cut off the Leviathan's path. The first shots were fired, warning bursts from the smaller vessels, designed to demonstrate resolve rather than cause damage. The response was immediate and devastating. The strange protrusions on the Leviathan's hull lit up with intense blue energy. Beams lashed out, not from conventional weapon ports, but from the patterns themselves. Where they touched, ships simply came apart. Not with explosions or fire, but with a cold precision that was somehow more terrifying. 3 ships were lost in the first exchange. The others broke formation, desperately trying to avoid the deadly beams while returning fire. Their most powerful weapons, railguns, plasma lances, nuclear-tipped missiles, struck the Leviathan's hull and dissipated harmlessly. From the bridge of the Thermopylae, John watched in horror as his fleet was systematically dismantled. All ships, retreat. Full emergency withdrawal. As the surviving vessels turned to flee, the Leviathan paused its advance. A final burst of the strange harmonic language blared through all communication channels, and then the transformed Dreadnought resumed its course toward Earth. Slower now, almost deliberate in its movements. It was coming home, but not as a friend. The return. Commander Ilara Chen had been expecting the call, though not at 300 hours. The chime of her personal communicator pulled her from a fitful sleep, the nightmares of her last combat deployment still fresh in her mind. "Chen," she answered, already reaching for her uniform. "Report to Luna Command immediately," came the terse reply. "Priority Alpha." 90 minutes later, she stood in a secure briefing room deep beneath the lunar surface. The gathered officers looked as though they hadn't slept in days, which, given the events of the past week, was entirely possible. Fleet Admiral Kazuo Tanaka, head of United Earth Intelligence, activated the room's holographic display. The transformed Leviathan floated before them, a detailed scan highlighting the alien modifications to its structure. "The situation is worse than we feared," Tanaka began without preamble. "The Leviathan has established orbit around Mars and has neutralized our defensive platforms there. 3 more ships have been lost attempting to engage it. Conventional weapons are ineffective against whatever shield technology it's using." "And the crew?" Chen asked. Tanaka's expression darkened. "Unknown. All attempts at communication have failed. What we do know is that the ship is emitting signals on multiple frequencies, signals directed at locations throughout human space and beyond." "It's calling for something," a civilian scientist interjected. Dr. Malcolm Reed, Chen recognized from her briefing packet, an expert in xenobiology and communication. "Or to something," Chen suggested. "Precisely," Tanaka confirmed. "Which brings us to why you're here, Commander. Your experience with the Arcturian incursion at Proxima Centauri and your background in xenopsychology make you uniquely qualified for this mission." Chen felt a chill run down her spine. "You want me to make contact. We want you to find out what happened to that ship, who or what is controlling it now, and how to stop it before it decides that Mars is just a waypoint on its journey to Earth." The mission briefing lasted hours. The plan was audacious, perhaps suicidal. A stealth vessel would approach the Leviathan during one of its periodic sensor suites. Chen and a small team would board using a prototype phase shift technology designed to bypass solid matter for brief periods. Once aboard, they would attempt to access the ship's systems and discover what had happened to the crew. "You leave in 6 hours," Tanaka concluded. "Assemble your team from this list of volunteers." Chen studied the names. Some she knew, others only by reputation. All were specialists in their fields, and all had experience with unusual combat situations. "One more thing," Tanaka added as the others filed out. "If you determine that the Leviathan cannot be recovered or neutralized, You are authorized to initiate Protocol Omega. Protocol Omega, the ultimate failsafe. A quantum-destabilized antimatter charge that would reduce the Leviathan and everything within a 10,000-kilometer radius to subatomic particles. Chen nodded grimly. Understood, Admiral. The approach to the Leviathan was tense but uneventful. The stealth vessel, UES Wraith, lived up to its name, slipping past the transformed Dreadnought's outer sensor perimeter undetected. From close range, the changes to the Leviathan were even more disturbing. Those aren't random additions, Dr. Reed observed as they studied the ship through the Wraith's sensors. That's a coherent pattern, almost like circuit pathways, but on a macro scale. Chen nodded. The question is, what's it powering? And who built it? The entry point selected was a secondary maintenance airlock, less likely to be monitored than the main docking bays. The phase shift technology worked as designed, allowing the 6-person team to pass through the outer hull without triggering alarms. Inside, the Leviathan was both familiar and alien. The basic layout remained, but the corridors were lined with the same strange, angular protrusions that covered the exterior. Pulsing blue energy flowed through them in complex patterns. Life support is functional, Lieutenant Farah Nazari, the team's engineer, reported. Atmosphere composition normal. But these energy conduits, they're drawing power from the ship's reactor and something else. Something I can't identify. Movement ahead, Sergeant Kai Takeda warned, his weapon raised. The team froze, weapons ready. From around a bend in the corridor, a figure appeared, human in general shape, but wrong in the details. It moved with a strange, fluid grace, and its skin had a metallic sheen. Where eyes should have been, there were only recessed points of blue light, matching the energy flowing through the ship. Hold fire, Chen ordered quietly. Let's see what it does. The figure paused, head tilting as though sensing their presence despite the stealth field generated by their suits. Then, in a movement too quick to follow, it was directly in front of Chen, face to face. It made no aggressive move, simply studying her with those points of light. Then it spoke, not in words, but in the same harmonics they had detected from the ship. Dr. Reed adjusted his translator. I'm not getting clear meaning, but it's curious. Not hostile. At least not yet. Chen made a decision. She deactivated her stealth field, becoming fully visible to the being. I am Commander Ilara Chen of the United Earth Space Force. We've come to understand what happened to this ship and its crew. The being's head tilted further, the lights where its eyes should be brightening. Then, slowly, it reached out a hand, not to touch Chen, but to point down the corridor. I think it wants us to follow, Reed suggested. With no better options, Chen nodded to her team. Stay alert. We follow, but keep a safe distance. The being led them deeper into the ship, through corridors that twisted in ways that didn't match the Leviathan's original layout. The further they went, the more the ship changed around them. Walls that should have been solid metal were now transparent in places, showing not the void of space, but something else. A realm of swirling energy and impossible geometries. It's like we're seeing between dimensions, Reed whispered, fascinated despite the danger. Finally, they reached what had once been the main bridge. Now, it was a vast chamber. The ceiling opened to reveal a view of Mars below and the stars beyond. The command stations had been replaced by crystalline structures that hummed with power. And there, in the center, was Captain Amara Voss, or what remained of her. Like the being that had guided them, she retained a human silhouette, but her body had been transformed. The strange metallic skin covered her completely, and lines of blue energy traced patterns across her form. When she turned to face them, her eyes were wells of the same energy. Commander Chen, she said, her voice layered with harmonics that made it sound like multiple voices speaking at once. You've come to understand. Good. There is much to share before the convergence. Captain Voss. Chen stepped forward cautiously. What happened to you? To your crew? Amaravos still exists within this form, as do all the others. We have been elevated. The architects found us when we crossed into their domain. They saw our potential, our uniqueness. They gave us a gift. The architects. Reed questioned. Voss, or the entity that had once been Voss, gestured, and the air between them shimmered. An image formed. Beings of pure energy, vastly different from any life form humanity had encountered. They exist in the spaces between realities. They have watched this universe for eons, studying its development. When our ship penetrated the veil between dimensions, they saw an opportunity. We are the first merger of their essence with physical forms from this reality. Merger, Chen repeated, the implication sinking in. You were absorbed by these beings. Transformed, Voss corrected. Enhanced. We understand now what we could not before. The limitations of single-dimensional existence. The inefficiency of individual consciousness. Chen exchanged glances with Reed, whose expression mirrored her own concern. And why have you returned? Why attack our ships? Those who cannot understand must not interfere. The convergence approaches. The architects have waited long enough. This universe has developed sufficient complexity to sustain their full presence. We are the harbingers, the preparation. A chill ran down Chen's spine. You're talking about an invasion. Voss smiled, an expression made disturbing by the inhuman features of her face. A transcendence. Your limited perspective sees threat where there is only evolution. The architects will elevate all consciousness in this reality, as they have elevated us. And those who don't want to be elevated, Chen asked. Irrelevant. The process cannot be stopped. It has already begun. As if on cue, the ship shuddered slightly. Outside, through the transparent ceiling, they could see energy building around the vessel. The beacons have been placed throughout your systems, Voss continued. The signal is being sent. The architects are coming. You should feel honored. This ship, this crew, will be remembered as the catalyst that began a new era for all life in this universe. Chen's hand moved imperceptibly toward the detonator for Protocol Omega, concealed in her equipment. Voss noticed the movement and laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Your weapon would be ineffective, Commander. The Leviathan exists partially outside conventional spacetime now, but your intent is noted. You fear what you do not understand. What I understand, Chen replied steadily, is that you're threatening my home, my species, without our consent. That's not evolution. It's conquest. Voss tilted her head, studying Chen with those unnerving eyes. Perhaps you require demonstration before understanding. Very well. She gestured, and one of the crystalline structures pulsed with intensity. A beam of energy shot upward, through the transparent ceiling, striking Mars. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, a wave of blue energy spread across the planet's surface from the impact point. Watch, Voss commanded. Through the ship's enhanced sensors, they could see the wave washing over a human research station on the Martian surface. As it passed, the structures began to change, reconfiguring into patterns similar to those on the Leviathan. And the humans inside. Chen felt sick as she watched the researchers transform, their bodies contorting as the blue energy infiltrated them. Stop this, she demanded. Those people didn't choose this. Choice is a limited concept, Voss replied. Did you choose to evolve from simpler life forms? Did consciousness choose to emerge from neural complexity? Evolution does not ask permission. As Chen struggled for a response, her comm unit buzzed with an encrypted signal from the Wraith. Commander, we're detecting massive energy buildups throughout the system. Something's coming through. Multiple spatial rifts forming near Earth, Venus, Jupiter. The convergence had begun. The reckoning. The Wraith's message continued, describing chaos throughout the solar system. The transformed Leviathan wasn't alone anymore. Similar energy signatures were appearing near every major human settlement. Earth's defensive fleet was mobilizing, but against an enemy that existed partially outside normal spacetime. Conventional weapons would be useless. Chen looked at her team, seeing the same grim determination in their eyes that she felt. They had come seeking answers, and they'd found them. Now they needed a solution. "Captain Voss," Chen said, turning back to the transformed figure. "You were once human. You protected Earth and its people. Does nothing of that loyalty remain?" Something flickered in the depths of those glowing eyes. A momentary hesitation. The being you knew as Amara Voss understood duty within a limited framework. What we are now sees a broader purpose. "Then help us understand," Chen pressed. "If this transformation is as beneficial as you claim, give us time to prepare our people. A controlled introduction rather than forced conversion." Dr. Reed stepped forward. "The most successful evolutionary adaptations occur gradually, with time for integration and adjustment. A sudden, forced change risks rejection, catastrophic failure of the very system you're trying to enhance." It was a desperate gambit, appealing to the logical processes of these beings while Chen's tactical mind raced through possibilities. The Protocol Omega device wouldn't work, according to Voss, but the transformed captain's confidence might be their only opening. Voss seemed to consider their words, head tilting in that unnervingly inhuman way. "Your perspective has merit. Forced integration risks resistance that could damage the very consciousness we seek to elevate. However, the architect's timeline cannot be altered significantly." "Then alter it insignificantly," Chen suggested. "Give us access to your systems. Let us study this process. Prepare our people. Reduce the shock of transition." For a long moment, Voss was utterly still, those blue eyes fixed on Chen. Then, she gestured to one of the crystalline control stations. "You may access limited data here. It will help you understand what comes." It was the opening they needed. Chen nodded to Lieutenant Nazari, who approached the console cautiously. As the engineer interfaced with the alien technology, Chen maintained eye contact with Voss, keeping the transformed captain's attention focused on her. "These architects," she continued, "what do they gain from this convergence? Expansion. Growth. Their realm diminishes as entropy increases. They require new energy, new consciousness to sustain themselves. So they're parasites," Chen observed bluntly. Voss's expression hardened. "Symbiotes. They offer transcendence beyond the limitations of physical form. At the cost of autonomy, of choice." Chen glanced briefly at Nazari, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. She had accessed the systems. "That's not symbiosis, Captain. That's consumption." Behind Voss, Surgeon Takeda had maneuvered into position near a junction of energy conduits. Dr. Reed stood ready beside another crystalline console, his translator working to decipher the alien symbols that flowed across its surface. "You cannot stop what has begun," Voss stated, a note of impatience entering her harmonic voice. "The rift points are stabilizing. The architects are manifesting. Your resistance is meaningless?" Chen interrupted. "I've heard that before. Usually right before humans prove it wrong." She gave the signal. In one synchronized movement, her team acted. Nazari activated a program she had uploaded to the ship's systems, a modified version of a virus originally designed to combat Arcturian neural networks. Reed initialized a feedback loop in the translation matrix, sending a cascade of conflicting commands through the ship's communication array. And Takeda fired a precisely calibrated pulse into the energy junction, disrupting the flow patterns. The effect was immediate and chaotic. The blue energy throughout the bridge fluctuated wildly. Voss staggered, clutching her head as though in pain. The transformed crew members around the chamber reacted similarly, their movements becoming erratic. "What have you done?" Voss demanded, her voice losing its harmonic quality, becoming more human and more desperate. "Created a contradiction," Chen explained as she moved to support the suddenly weakened captain. "Your systems are designed to merge consciousness, to synchronize it with the architect's patterns. We introduced noise into that system, human noise, chaos, individuality." Nazari's virus was spreading through the ship's neural network, carrying with it fragments of human music, art, poetry, mathematics, the complex, contradictory beauty of individual expression. Reed's translation matrix was broadcasting the same chaos outward to the beacons placed throughout the system and to the forming rifts. "It won't stop them," Voss gasped, her form flickering between the transformed state and something more recognizably human. "They're too powerful." "Maybe," Chen acknowledged, "but it will slow them down, confuse them, and buy us time to find a better solution than surrender." Through the transparent ceiling, they could see the effects rippling outward. The energy wave on Mars's surface was receding. The rifts forming throughout the system were fluctuating, destabilizing. Voss collapsed to her knees, the metallic sheen of her skin flaking away in places, revealing human flesh beneath. "You don't understand what you're rejecting," she whispered, her voice now almost entirely human, though laced with pain. "The knowledge, the power." "At too high a price," Chen replied gently. "Humanity isn't ready to transcend its physical form, not like this. Maybe someday, but it has to be our choice, not forced upon us." The ship shuddered violently. Across the bridge, other transformed crew members were changing, the alien influence weakening as the virus spread. Some collapsed, unconscious. Others seemed confused, looking around as though waking from a dream. "We need to go," Takeda warned. "This whole ship is destabilizing. Whatever's holding it between dimensions is failing." Chen nodded and turned back to Voss. "Come with us. We can help you, help your crew." Voss looked up, her eyes now a strange mixture of human brown and ethereal blue. "It's too late for me. For most of us, we've been changed too deeply." She gripped Chen's arm with surprising strength. "But the others, some of the crew are just beginning the transformation. They might be saved." "How many?" Chen demanded. 300, maybe 4, in stasis chambers on the lower decks. The architects were processing them gradually. Chen activated her comm unit. "Wraith, this is Chen. We need immediate extraction and medical support for up to 400 crew members. The situation is unstable, but the immediate threat has been neutralized." As her team moved to locate and retrieve the crew members in stasis, Chen stayed with Voss. The captain's transformation was reversing, but not toward humanity. Her form was becoming less substantial, energy bleeding away with each passing moment. "They're angry," Voss whispered, her voice fading. "The architects. They don't forgive failure, but they're also afraid. Your chaos, your individuality, it disrupts their patterns, makes them vulnerable." "Then we found their weakness," Chen said. "And we'll be ready if they try again." Voss smiled, an eerily human expression on her increasingly translucent face. "They will, but not soon. You've bought your people time, Commander. Years, perhaps decades." Her form flickered more violently. "Use it wisely. Prepare." As rescue operations continued throughout the destabilizing vessel, Voss and many of the most heavily transformed crew members simply dissolved, their energy dispersing as the connection to the architect's realm weakened. The ship itself began to break apart, sections phasing in and out of normal spacetime. In the end, 317 crew members were rescued, those still in the early stages of transformation. The Leviathan itself collapsed into a singularity that quickly evaporated, leaving nothing but scattered radiation and debris where the mighty Dreadnought had once been. The rifts throughout the system closed, the architect's attempted incursion thwarted, for now. 1 year later, Commander, now Captain, Elara Chen stood in a secure facility beneath Luna's surface. Before her, behind reinforced transparent aluminum, the survivors of the Leviathan underwent their daily therapy. Many had recovered fully, their bodies and minds returning to human baseline once removed from the architect's influence. Others retained fragments of the transformation, enhanced cognitive abilities, perception of energy fields, dreams of spaces between dimensions. Admiral Tanaka joined her at the observation window. The Vicarians have agreed to share their dimensional stabilization technology. The Arcturians are actually talking about a formal alliance, nothing like an existential threat to bring old enemies together. Chen nodded, and the defense grid. Phase 1 will be operational within 6 months. Every major settlement in the system will have detection systems for dimensional anomalies. Your chaos virus has been weaponized. If they try to open another rift, we'll be ready. It won't be enough, Chen said quietly. Not forever. Voss said they'd come back stronger, more prepared. Then we'll be stronger too, Tanaka replied with grim determination. The recovered Leviathan tech has already advanced our understanding of cross-dimensional physics by decades, and the data you retrieved from their systems, we're just beginning to understand it. Chen watched as one of the survivors, a young engineer who had served under Voss, demonstrated his ability to manipulate small energy fields, forming them into complex geometric patterns. The researchers observing him took careful notes. We'll be ready, she agreed finally. Humanity has faced extinction before. We adapted, survived. We'll do it again. What she didn't say, what the classified reports hinted at but no one would officially acknowledge, was that traces of the architect's energy had been detected in the brain patterns of every human within range of the Leviathan signals. Microscopic changes, dormant for now, but present nonetheless. The convergence had been halted, not prevented. The battle for humanity's future had only just begun. But for now, Earth was safe. The Dreadnought that had vanished and returned transformed was gone. Its legacy, however, would shape human destiny for generations to come. In the void between dimensions, the architects watched, and waited, and planned, and humanity prepared. The end